A few things before we dive in. This webinar is best viewed in side-by-side mode, and then once you're in that mode, select Fit to Window. This approach will allow you to see the entire slide, which can sometimes be cut off by Zoom. We've set aside time at the end for Q&A. We request that you add your questions in the Q&A feed and include your name. If we don't get to your question or your response needs additional follow-up, we can contact you if you added your name. This webinar is also being recorded and will be posted on the website along with a copy of the slides. And we'll email everyone who registered to the call to let them know it's been posted. So with that, let's get started. What's new for 2025? I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about 2025 because we recently did a webinar on that and it is posted on our webpage. The QR code right here has it. The slides are up right now and the video is being captioned and should be up shortly. So rather than go over all of that, I'm going to touch on some of the key issues and themes for 2025 that you need to know about. The top line is really that we're looking at 2025 as a year for building and for advancing. We learned a ton in 2024, and we want to grow from that base of 2024 to be even better in 2025. Our aim is to improve service delivery for children and for their families so that the right kids get the benefits at the right time, which is during the summer when they need them. We offered a significant amount of flexibility in 2024 because it was a really unique year. But starting in 2025, administering agencies are really going to need to work towards compliance with all the regulations. So what we're saying is those same flexibilities that we offered in 2024 are generally not going to be offered in the same way in 2025. That being said, we know there are still challenges. Summer EBT is a work in progress. And at FNS, our focus in working with you, the states and tribes and territories, when you're working on your POMs, is to be looking at how you're developing systems and processes that are consistent with the regulations and that can operate the program right. Although we all understand that there are factors that may, make it not work out exactly the way that you intended it to. Our bottom line is progress, not perfection. So like I said, we offered many flexibilities in 2024, given the tight time frame for implementation between when the rule was published and the start of the summer. But the conditions are different in 2025, and we don't intend to offer that same roster of flexibilities that we did last year. But we do know that Rome was not built in a day, and some states and ITOs are still going to need flexibility for 2025. And for those of you who are operating for the first time in 2025, we recognize you'll need additional help as well. So, where we stand right now, it's early in the 2025 program year. We know there's a lot to do, but our focus right now isn't on the waiver process. It's on working with states, ITOs, and territories to identify their specific challenges and to figure out ways that we can make progress on program implementation so that more children can get their benefits more timely. I do want to point out, however, that we have already approved some waivers. We're allowing a waiver of the August 15th deadline for the iPOM, recognizing that some states just are not able to make that deadline yet this year. And then we'll consider other waivers on a case-by-case basis. And what we're really looking for in waiver requests is waivers that are targeted. So we're looking at really the key challenge for you and not waiving an entire requirement, and waivers that are really thoroughly justified. So if you're working on your POM and you're identifying things that you think you might need a waiver of, talk to your regional office and please talk to them early and we'll can figure out, what the most appropriate steps for you are. Also new for 2025 is that we are happy to unveil our new POM templates. In the longer term, our intent is to continue to simplify the POM. So in 2025, however, we still think that we're making a lot of progress. Plans are changing a lot year to year as people have new resources, get new systems out online, and are generally honing their programs. So for this year, we still want a POM that paints a really full picture of what's going on in your program. But after 2025 and years beyond that, our intent is really to move to a POM process that's more simple. We don't want to ask you for the same information year after year if you've got a static system and it's working. So our goal is to move towards a system where you are affirming more information, hasn't changed, rather than providing all new information every year. So that's the goal, but in this year, we still are looking for a really detailed description of your programs because of where we are in this whole process. So with that said, let us jump into the templates. So for 2025, we have 3 POM templates. One is for states and Puerto Rico, one is for Indian tribal organizations, and one is for territories. That's American Samoa, CNMI, Guam, and the US Virgin Islands. The templates are largely the same as each other, but they do differ in some areas to reflect differences between how the programs operate across the states, ITOs, and territories. You can see we've got a QR code here on the screen. You can use this to access our Linktree website, and there's a link there, it's the 4th one down, that will give you access to these POM templates. So this year, August 15th is the deadline for the iPOM. It went into effect this year. However, many states and ITOs are still working on their budgets this year, so we're offering waivers of this deadline. There are 2 options to request this waiver. There's a question in the iPOM template itself where you can indicate that you want a waiver of the August 15th deadline. So if you want, when you turn in the iPOM, you can ask for the waiver at that point as part of the template. Or we're also providing a template that you can submit before you submit your iPOM, and you can ask your regional office if you haven't seen that template already. But the bottom line is you only need to submit one. If you want that waiver, either tell us in the POM template itself or submit the waiver request form. The 2025 POM deadline is still February 15th, 2025, but you can submit at any point prior to that. We already have a few full POMs in hand that we're reviewing right now with the goal of improving them as soon as possible. So that is pretty exciting.
Okay, so here we have your first knowledge test to keep things exciting. I'm trapped in my screen. One moment. Okay, so we've got 2 questions here. Your first question is there flexibility to waive the iPOM deadline, excuse me? And your second question is, can I send a complete POM instead of an iPOM? And I'll give you all just a minute. I'm seeing some good numbers here, closing in on 60. Let's see if we can hit 100. So we've got a lot. So for the first question, I see a lot of you saying, yes, you can receive a waiver for this deadline. And for the second question, I'm seeing most of you saying yes as well. Give it one more second. Okay. Let me close it out. All right, it's really slowing down, so I'm going to close it out. Ending the poll and sharing the results. And you guys should all be able to see the correct answers. So for the first question, is there flexibility to waive the iPOM deadline? The correct answer is yes, you could receive a waiver for this deadline. And for the second question, can I send a complete POM instead of an iPOM? The answer is also yes. And with that, I will turn it back to Anne.
Thank you. So next we're going to look at the attachments that need to be submitted along with the iPOM and the POM. For the POM, we're looking at 3 things in particular. First is the FNS 366A. And please note that your Summer EBT agency can amend your FNS 366 later on, but it is a required part of the original iPOM. Second, we need a budget narrative that corresponds to your 366A. And third, we need the estimated number of children who will be served in 2025. If you have these three things, you have your complete iPOM. We also have a couple of resources for you to use while developing your iPOM. These were requested specifically by Summer EBT agencies, so we hope they're helpful this year. The first is a budget narrative template, and the second is a budget narrative checklist, and we'll get back to those in a moment. For the POM, there are several attachments that we're looking for. First is attachment A, the data collection and use form, which we'll also talk about later. Next is a copy of your interagency written agreement between the Summer EBT coordinating and each partnering agency, if applicable. If you had an agreement last year and nothing has changed, you do not need to resubmit this document, but you do need to let us know that that document still stands and there have been no changes. Third is a copy of your fair hearing procedures for participants. And finally, if you're an ITO Summer EBT agency, you need to submit a map or another visual reference that shows what your ITO service area is going to be. So let's move on and look at the budget narrative and checklist. Here you can see some screenshots of them. Like I said, we heard from several Summer EBT agencies that it would be helpful to have this. So the budget narrative is an optional template that you can use to describe what's in your 366A. We did include some sample entries, which you can see in red in that template. So we hope that it is easy to fill out, but please let us know if you have questions on how to complete it. And then we have the budget checklist, which is not meant to be turned in with your iPOM. This is just a list of things to consider and to be aware of as you're filling out your budget. The intent of these resources is to help you simplify the process and to avoid common mistakes when you're developing your budget for your iPOM. And both of these can be found on our iPOM POM template website. Okay. So now for the balance of the webinar, we're going to walk through the POM and review its requirements for states, territories, and ITOs. The following slides are organized in the order that they appear in the POM templates, and we're going to be using examples as we go through. So for today's example, the coordinating agency is the Department of Health and Human Services, or DHHS, and the partnering agency is the Department of Education, or DOE. So let's begin. The first thing you'll see is these questions, and you need to fill out who will be the coordinating agency and who will be the partnering agency. In this section, you'll also be asked to check a box under each agency type, which will indicate which agencies are requesting administrative funds through 366A. And we request that you tell us if you're going to request local level costs as part of that 366A. This helps us to understand what to expect and what we're looking for with your budget documents. Next is your summer schedule and your issuance dates. Here you're going to insert the first and last days of your summer operational period, as well as a brief explanation as to why you chose those dates. Now, we've said this before, but to say it again, the summer operational period must generally reflect the period between the end of classes during the current school year and the start of classes for the next school year. So it should cover as many children as possible when they're on break. That means it should align with when the earliest schools are getting out and when the latest schools are returning. So in the example we see on this slide, 20% of schools let out the last week of May and 80% let out in June. So the start of the summer operational period should begin the end of the last week of May, which happens to be June 1, which you can see is the start of their summer operational period. Otherwise, 1/5 of children would not have their benefits available to spend at the beginning of the summer when they're out of school. Likewise, you can see they still have kids out of school through August 24th, so the application is open through that time. Here you'll also include information about whether benefits will be issued to children in one lump sum or in multiple issuances. And this question isn't about whether or not you're going to stagger your issuances to manage capacity. What we want to know is if each child will receive more than one issuance in that summer. So for example, will they get the benefit all at one time, like the full 120 this year? Or will they get their portion across 2 or 3 issuances? Like for example, will they get 3 monthly issuances of $40? So you provide a short explanation of how many issuances and the amount provided in those issuances, and the dates on which they'll be provided can be included here. In this example, the state is issuing one issuance, which is a lump sum benefit, and the state will stagger the disbursements between May 18th and May 24th. And this meets the requirement that eligible children receive their benefits no less than 7, but no more than 14 days before the start of the summer operational period.
Okay, so here, oops. Okay, sorry about that. Here we have another knowledge check, and that's going to pop up on your screen in just a moment. Okay, so your question this time is, what should the summer operational period be for this scenario? The school end dates, 23% of children finish school on June 2nd, and 77% of children finish school on June 16th. The school start dates, 21% of children start school August 11th, and 79% of children start school on August 18th. So make your choices. A lot of people are thinking June 2nd to August 18th. Got a couple June 16th to August 18th. So we'll leave it open a couple more seconds. Try to hit the minute mark. Looks like they're slowing down. Oh, 2 more. I don't want to cut anybody off if you want to answer our quiz. All right, we have exactly 100. Oh, 101. I'm going to end the poll. All right, and I'm going to show everybody the answer. So great job. We had 61% got it correct. June 2nd to August 18th is the correct summer operational period. All right. Thank you all for playing our quiz. And I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back to Anne.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the summer schedules. So states, ITOs, and Puerto Rico will have to fill out this chart for their summer schedules and issuance date section. Here you should provide the type of enrollment, the date of issuance, and the estimated number of children issued by each enrollment type. In this example, we see that all streamline certified children in all approved summer EBT applications that were received prior to May 15th, 2025, or May 5th, 2025, excuse me, will receive their benefits beginning May 18th, 2025. And the expected number of children who will receive benefits in this round is 500,000. On the next line, we see all summer EBT applications received after the initial issuance file is compiled, which we can reasonably assume is everyone submitting after May 5th, 2025. These children will receive their benefits within 15 operational days of receipt of a complete application, which meets our regulations, and they expect 10,000 students to receive their benefits this way. So in this example, a total of 510,000 eligible children are expected to receive benefits. In our example, the Summer EBT agency is meeting the requirement to issue benefits 7 to 14 days before the start of the summer operational period, or within 15 days of application. However, this isn't going to be possible for everyone, so use this table to let us know what you can do. We really do want to see your realistic timeline here. Okay. Now, on the POM the territories POM template, you'll see a slightly different set of boxes. Here you see this is for Guam and the U.S. Virgin Islands. They're going to follow the same process as the states, ITOs, and Puerto Rico, which will be the type of enrollment, date or dates of issuance, and how many children they expect to be issued benefits by enrollment type. American Samoa and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands will provide FNS with the issuance method for food coupons, For example, issuing by last name to the head of the household or by case number. In this example, last names beginning with A through L or case numbers ending in 1 or 2 will be issued benefits July 15th, 2025. And the number of children they would expect to issue benefits on this date and enrollment type is 100,000. And of course, if you were American Samoa or CNMI, you would add more boxes below for names M through Z and numbers above 3 and so on. Okay. This next section includes information on continuous school calendars, which are also known as year-round schools. If you check yes to indicate that you have year-round schools, then please ensure that you complete the explanation section directly below the checkboxes. The Summer EBT agency may propose alternative plans for providing benefits to these children when they're no longer on breaks during the school year. This might look like providing benefits at 3 separate times throughout the year to align with longer breaks. However, we understand that that could be a really big lift right now. So you could also provide an explanation as to why you want to provide them benefits during the summer, along with kids on a traditional school calendar. In this example, the state let us know that their population of kids attending schools year-round is very low, looks like 3%, and it's not feasible for them to create a separate schedule for kids this year, and that's fine. This may be a future year plan for you. Okay, so let's look at EBT issuance. This applies to states, ITOs, Puerto Rico, Guam, and US Virgin Islands. In this section, you need to let us know how kids will get the benefits, and you should check all the boxes that apply. You can co-load benefits onto existing cards, in which case, please let us know what type of account you will co-load with. In this example, the state will co-load Summer EBT benefits on SNAP cards for children in SNAP households. Even though they're co-loading, not every eligible kid participates in another program that you can co-load with. For those kids, you'll need to tell us whether you intend to issue 1 card per household, like the state in this example, or 1 card per child. So now that we've talked about the number of kids you plan to serve, your issuance schedule, and how you plan to provide benefits, I want to take the time to remind you that your EBT processor also needs all of this information to help you plan for success. You don't want to find out late in the game that you told us one thing that you're going to do, and then your processor says you can't do that because they didn't have time to schedule it, and maybe they have already scheduled other states to issue at the same time, or maybe they weren't aware of how many cards you would need and didn't order enough card stock. There are a lot of things that could shift your plans, and you want to make sure you're having that conversation really early with your EBT processor so you agree on what needs to be done and how it's going to be done. Similarly, if you're making changes, please do contact your FNS State Systems Office, or SSO, if you have any questions about the state system or advanced planning document, or APD process. Like I said, providing this information is early, especially when talking with your EBT processor. You don't need to have finished a contract amendment. You don't need to have had approved POM yet. The more important thing is having the conversation early. Everyone understands this is a dynamic process, and everybody understands that these are estimates and can change. So providing the estimates is better than waiting until you've got the final numbers in an approved POM. Okay, so now for American Samoa and Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Island only, this section looks a little different. These territories operate the Nutrition Assistance Program, or NAP, and they issue their summer EBT benefits in the same manner as NAP. So here you should check all that apply. Either issuing 1 food coupon booklet for each eligible child to the head of household, or issuing 1 food coupon booklet to all eligible children in the household to the head of household. Territories operating NAP also need a waiver for the requirement to provide replacement EBT cards and pins within 2 days. So if your territory needs to utilize this waiver, you would check yes here to indicate that. As you can see in this example, the territory is using a food coupon booklet that they'll give to the head of the household for each eligible child, and they have checked yes, they are utilizing the replacement EBT card and pin waiver. Okay. Now we're going to look at the eligibility section for states, ITOs, and Puerto Rico. First in this section, make sure attachment A, data collection and use, is completed and include it as an attachment to your POM submission. And we'll look at that attachment in a minute or two. Next, if you're an ITO or a state summer EBT agency that's serving the same geographic area as an ITO, you need to describe when, how, and in what format you will share program data with the other state or ITO. This collaboration is required in the regulations, and it's integral to ensure that all eligible children receive summer EBT benefits, and no child gets more than one summer EBT benefit from a state and ITO. Sharing this information is key. It's key for access and for integrity, and states and ITOs really need to collaborate on the development of this section to make sure that it meets both parties' needs. Finally, provide your state or ITO's age of compulsory school attendance, also known as your school age. Your compulsory school age will generally be defined in state or tribal law. And in this example, it's 5 to 17 years old. So let's look at attachment A, data collection and use. And this is specific for states, ITOs, and Puerto Rico. And we divided the table into two slides. You're going to see half now and half in the next slide. This information was spread across several sections of the POM template in 2024. Here in attachment A, we're pulling it all together and we put it in a table because we think it makes it easier to complete and easier to review. This is one area that we are likely to streamline more in future years, but in these early years, while things are still changing a lot, we have found this to be a really useful tool to analyze your plans and discuss your plans with you for streamlined certification and verification. So in the first column, you'll indicate the program data that will be used for streamlined certification, and please check all that apply. By checking the box, you're affirming that data confidentiality will be maintained, that data from the entire 2025 eligibility period will be used, and that data duplication is conducted throughout the process of obtaining and compiling data. For Puerto Rico only, this includes data from the school's socioeconomic survey. In the second column, you're going to check the program data used for direct verification. Remember, if you use data source for streamlined certification, you have to use it for direct verification if the data is available at the state or ITO level. In this example, the state is using school meal data, SNAP, TANF, and FDPIR for streamlined certification and for direct verification. In the next two columns, tell us about how and when you're going to get the data. With these columns, we're looking to understand your process for obtaining the data and how often the data will be refreshed. Here we can see that this state is getting school meal lists through a secure portal from schools, FDPIR data through a secure data file transfer from ITOs that operate within the state, and DHHS is getting SNAP and TANF data through a secure internal transfer. They're getting the initial batch by May 1, and then updates thereafter, depending on the type of data. Here's the bottom half of that same table. The columns ask the same questions as the previous slide. The additional rows here are for streamlined certification for Medicaid, or children who can be identified as foster, homeless, migrant, runaway, or Head Start. The final row provides space for you to propose other programs to use for streamlined certification. We can approve state or tribal programs if you can demonstrate that they can be used to identify children who meet the eligibility standards for summer EBT. For example, a tribal TANF program. If you want to streamline certify with an additional program, use this chart to explain how the eligibility guidelines align with summer EBT requirements and how the program's eligibility is determined. In this example, the state will do streamlined certification with school meals, SNAP, TANF, and FDPIR, which we saw in the prior slide, Medicaid, foster, migrant, and runaway data. They will also conduct direct verification with all of these, except for foster, migrant, and runaway, because that data isn't available at the summer EBT agency level. They're getting the Medicaid data through a secure internal transfer, and the foster, migrant, and runaway data through a secure portal from the schools. Okay, let's look at the eligibility section in the territories template. Territories also have to complete attachment 1, but it's attachment 1A, or A1, sorry. data collection and use for territories, and include this with their POM submission. Territories have unique waiver authority that's established in separate laws that are specific to territories. This allows them to waive certain requirements which cannot be waived using our standard waiver authority in NSLP. So the next question in this section states that all territories except Puerto Rico may waive the requirement to enroll children based on their individual eligibility for summer EBT. Check yes to utilize this waiver. Finally, include the legal minimum age and maximum age for compulsory school enrollment. In this example, it is also 5 to 17 years old. And here is attachment A1, data collection and use for territories. It's similar to the documentation for states, ITOs, and Puerto Ricos, and we've split it into 2 slides again for ease of viewing. First, check the box for all program data that the territory will use for streamlined certification. As you can see, this territory has checked that they will use school meal or NSLP enrollment lists, which is required type of program data for all territories to use. Next, provide how this data will be obtained. In this case, the territory might employ a data such as transferring enrollment lists from schools to the Summer EBT agency via email, or perhaps uploading them to a territory level database. And finally, how frequently will it be obtained? An example may be that this data will be provided 3 times throughout the year, October 1st, February 1st, and May 1st. These are just examples, and your territory should input your actual processes and dates. Here's the second half of the table. In the first half, we saw that they were going to use NSLP school meal program data, and SNAP and TANF were not suggested. And here we can see why, which is that they operate NAP. So the NAP box is checked. As a reminder, SNAP, TANF, and NAP data are all required to be used to enroll children through streamlined certification if that data is available at the territory level. And for all program types, you should fill out how the data will be obtained and how frequently. Okay. In this section, we're going to go through the state or ITO-wide database. Summer EBT agencies are required to establish and maintain a state or ITO-wide database of children who are enrolled in NSLP participating schools within the state or ITO for the purpose of enrolling eligible children who submit applications for summer EBT. FNS understands that states and ITOs are coming from different starting points. Some of you may already have a database, while others are just getting started. We have had a lot of good conversations with states about what this database needs to look like. It may be that you already have something that could meet the functional requirements. You just need to figure out a way to make the systems work together. It could be that you already have something that you're using for a different program that can be used for this as well. There are a lot of ways to get to this. It is not a one-size-fits-all requirement. So, if you have something that maybe you're using for another program and you want to see if it works for summer EBT, or you have a couple systems that just need to talk to each other, talk to us and let us know, and we can figure out how you can meet the requirement most efficiently. For your POM, you need to inform us which agency or agencies will be responsible for maintaining the database. Confirm that the database will meet at a minimum, have all the required fields that are shown on this slide, and describe how the agency will use the database to create the issuance file. In this example, the Department of Health and Human Services is responsible for the database. They will receive school data from DOE and compile it with other sources of streamlined certification data. Okay, so here's the second half of this table. So states and ITOs need to tell FNS whether or not the summer EBT agency can utilize the statewide database to check enrollment for children, provide which agency will conduct the enrollment check, and provide details on how the data will be used to confirm that an applicant for summer EBT is enrolled in an NSLP school. Here we see that DHS will administer the summer EBT application and will work with DOE to do the enrollment check for the applications. In this situation, the database is comprised of 2 parts, one at DHS for the issuance lists, and one at DOE for the enrollment files to confirm enrollment.
Okay, so we have another knowledge check here. Another quiz should be popping up There we go. Okay, and so your quiz question now is, can your database be used for other programs or only for Summer EBT? And your options are the database can also be used for other programs, and the database can only be used for Summer EBT. So go ahead and check what you think the answer is, and we'll see if we can hit 100 again. Respondents, that is. So I think we're definitely closing in on that. Give you guys a couple more seconds. It's like you're slowing down. All right, I think I'm going to end the poll, and it should share out the results. Okay, so the correct answer is, as you can see, sorry about that, the database can also be used for other programs. I'm going to stop sharing so I can get back to my other screen. Okay, the correct answer is yes. As mentioned before, your database does not need to be specific to Summer EBT. The database can be used for other programs as well, as long as it allows you to check enrollment for Summer EBT. And with that, I'll turn it back to Anne. Anne, you are on mute.
Apologize, I was muted. Thank you, Brianna. Now we're going to go over the application section of the POM. Here you will select who will process and verify Summer EBT applications. The intent of this question is to determine whether processing and verification will be conducted by the state or ITO, or if LEAs will do this work through a contract with the state or ITO. In this example, the Summer EBT agency is doing the processing and verification themselves. So far, processing and verification have been done by Summer EBT agencies or LEAs, but we're also including an option for other and are open to other ideas for accomplishing this requirement. In the last question on this side, you can let us know if your agency is proposing an alternative method for verification. This would be anything that is not the standard 3% sample selected between the start of the summer operational period and April 1st. I'm sorry, start of the eligibility period and April 1st. For this example, the Summer EBT agency is proposing to select and verify a 3% sample on a rolling basis between the start of the eligibility period and the last day of the summer operational period.
Okay, and here we are on our last knowledge check. So you will see, once again, be seeing your last quiz pop it on your screen. And your question now is there flexibility around verification requirements for 2025? And I will once again give you all about 1 minute to answer this question. We're about halfway there. Okay. We're closing in on a minute, and I see we've got quite a few respondents. Right now we're split 75-25. Let's see. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I don't know if you guys can see the percentages that I can see. All right, we're slowing down. We're at the minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll so that you guys can see the correct answer. And I'm going to share the results. So the correct answer is yes. Once again, switch my screens. Yes, the state can propose alternative verification plans that provide an equivalent level of integrity. For example, a different sampling period if the state needs to finish compiling the issuance file earlier in the year, or a rolling sample as applications come.
Okay, thank you again, Brianna. So let's look now at the customer service plan. Many summer EBT agencies did an excellent job of this in their 2024 plans. So for those of you who did a good job, we encourage you to fill it out very similar to how you did in the 2024 POM. Customer service plans must include a single point of contact for all customer service information and inquiries. And this needs to include a telephone hotline and a website. In addition, the customer service plan must communicate how households can opt out of participating in the program. And summer EBT agencies must discuss how they will provide written training materials to each household. Lastly, we ask that agencies describe how participants can provide updated contact information and check their eligibility status. And summer EBT agencies must also describe the procedures for assisting vulnerable populations like children with limited English proficiency or children without a permanent address. Some examples of how agencies can fulfill these requirements are on the slide. In this example, the state or ITO is offering a portal where families can update contact information or opt out of the program, or they're offering that families could do this through their hotline. The summer EBT agency will also work with community liaisons and their child welfare agency to reach vulnerable populations, and will use a language access line for those with limited English proficiency. And let's go to program violations and issuance errors. The summer EBT agency is responsible for investigating complaints or irregularities and must take appropriate action to correct any irregularities, including but not limited to disqualification and claims. In most cases, summer EBT agencies that operated in 2024 have used their existing SNAP, WIC, or NAP processes with some alterations to reflect differences between program requirements in summer EBT and SNAP, WIC, or NAP. This is fine and encouraged, but if you do that, just make sure you explain to us how your plan is responsive to the specific requirements of summer EBT regulations, and you can check the citations that are in the POM template to see what those requirements are.
Okay, so now I'll be taking over the last section of the 2025 POM. By the way, if no one knows me yet, my name is Michelle Bucelo Ortiz, and I'm a program analyst at Summer EBT. And I'm going to run through you now the ITO specific elements of the POM. Okay, so in the first slide, we have the benefit delivery model. Here, the ITO needs to let us know what the benefit will be comprised of and the value of the benefit, which it cannot exceed the benefit level for that program year. So for example, in 2024, participating ITOs developed a combination of cash value benefit and a food package that totaled $120 or less. Tribal nations have the flexibility to choose one of these three models listed here on the slide or propose their own benefit delivery model. In this example, the ITO is proposing a combination model that includes a set amount of certain foods and a cash value voucher that can be used to purchase fruits and vegetables, similar to how the WIC food package works. Okay, now we'll go over the tribal food package. ITOs proposing to use a food package or a combination model must provide a chart or table, which we will see in the next slide, detailing the types and quantities of food which can be bought with the summer EBT benefits. This chart or table must include the average cost of each item within the ITO service area to be able to establish that the value of the package does not exceed the 2025 benefit level. It is important that ITOs provide FNS detailed information on their proposed package and the average cost, so that that estimated cost of the food package is as accurate as possible. Again, we cannot approve a benefit delivery model that will cost more than the current year's benefit. Foods included in the benefit package must also meet nutritional requirements described in the summer EBT regulations. Foods allowable for WIC are also allowable in summer EBT, except for infant food or formula. The Summer EBT agency does not need to provide its entire WIC product list for Summer EBT because we already know these foods are allowable. However, if the ITO wants to provide foods that aren't already in their WIC food package, they need to provide a list of what those foods are. Okay, we're continuing with the food package. And if the ITO included non-WIC items in their Summer EBT food package, the ITO must evaluate each item and confirm that it meets the nutritional requirements for ITO Summer EBT benefits. However, for this example, the ITO chose not to include non-WIC items in their Summer EBT package. Okay, in this slide and in the next one, we've divided for ease of viewing. We will go over an example of a food package table for a combination benefit delivery model. As you can see on this slide, and as well as in the next slide, we have listed all the food items along with their quantities, their price per unit, their average cost for each of these items, and the amount of the cash value benefits for fruits and vegetables. In this example, the ITO is providing a monthly benefit split into 3 issuance. So each child will be able to purchase this package 3 times. Okay, and then here's the second half of the table. And in the last row, you can see the total average cost of the food package, which in this case doesn't exceed $40, which was the monthly benefit in 2024. Once the 2025 benefit level is released, the ITO can make adjustments if necessary. Okay, so now we will go over tribal vendor oversight. And because tribal nations use their WIC EBT model to operate Summer EBT, tribal nations must authorize WIC retailers to accept the Summer EBT ITO defined benefit. For vendors to transact ITO Summer EBT benefits, the ITO must confirm in its POM that vendors are authorized to accept Summer EBT benefits and that they will comply with Summer EBT requirements. As you can see, the ITO in this example has affirmed that all of these requirements will be met. The ITO Summer EBT agency also needs to describe their plan to enroll, train, and monitor Summer EBT vendors. ITO Summer EBT agency must also affirm that it will meet requirements related to penalties and claims against vendors. Again, this ITO has affirmed that these requirements will be met for the purposes of this POM example. And finally, the ITO Summer EBT agency must affirm that it will operate Summer EBT separately and distinct from WIC, which are, in our example, again, the ITO has checked yes to affirm. Okay, so the kudos sections. So while you guys are answering this kudos section that provides us with a sneak peek of something that you're proud of for 2025, I will start overing some tips. And I know you've heard of these tips time and again if you've seen some of our webinars, but we still feel that these tips are necessary and are good to be repeated. So first, I want to let you guys know that please talk to your regional office early if you anticipate challenges in submitting your POM or trying to figure out elements of your POM. And we'll, if you contact us, we may be able to help or suggest alternative approaches to meet their requirements. Another tip is to please submit your POM early to avoid delays in the review process. Last year, we received a lot of POMs all at once, and which really affected state agencies and ITO's timelines to be able to implement well. Also, 3, please include us as soon as possible in the development of your POMs. We will gladly work with you to review language before you get internal sign-off. And lastly, please let us know how we can help. Please let us know if we're doing well with this webinars, if the town halls and other resources that we provide to you, like the toolkit, like other resources like the budget narrative and budget checklist help. And please give us your feedback on any of those resources, and we'll gladly make them more suitable for you guys. And I don't see, oh, we're starting to see some responses for the kudos. So as we see, like providing, one thing that we're going to do well for 2025 is providing more training so everyone knows their role. I guess we're not getting a lot of responses in the kudos, but if you guys want to use the chat and we can start reading them out just for a few seconds. Providing more training so everyone knows their role. Online parent eligibility checker. Give it a few more seconds. And if not, we can transfer to the Q&A.
We can also start answering questions and leave it up so people can submit more things while we're going. So thank you, Michelle. Let me pull up the Q&A here quickly. I lost it with the chat. Got quite a few questions.